It's all good. How's it going today?
Good, thank you. I love
Good.
your background.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm a visual artist, so that's one of my originals. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
That
yeah.
is so cool.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, it's fun. So, where are you located?
I in Toronto, Canada.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I had a my son's on the spectrum and we met a baseball player for the Royals. There was a meet and greet. It was kind of we're a part of Special Olympics YMCA Challenger, and one of the
Wow.
players was Nicky Lopez. And I wanted to know what his favorite city was to go to. And they always said the day after they went to Toronto, they were all a little bit hungover and not feeling too good in Toronto because they had so much fun up there.
That's hilarious.
And I've heard that about San Diego too. When teams go to San Diego, it can be really bad because they love it so much there. So they get out and burn the midnight oil like Babe Ruth and try to come in and play baseball. Yeah.
Wow.
But it's a beautiful city. I'm in Kansas City, one of the cradles of jazz. So
Oh
yeah,
my gosh, that's super
yeah.
cool.
And that's the skyline right there. That was kind of what I was emulating was the Kansas City skyline back there.
I love it.
So yeah. Well, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, and I'm so sorry that I had to reschedule.
Oh, it's
I do
fine.
I do acting as well, and sometimes the auditions are insane. So um yeah, so I'm sorry. So I appreciate you giving
Yeah.
me a day.
Yeah, no, it's first world problems, you know. I mean, especially living through COVID. It's like, are you kidding me? That's all we got used to was delays and everything. So
That's
it's
true.
all good. Well, it's great to meet you. I want to begin our conversation. Speaking of COVID, that really went through the musicians in this world in a very specific way. 4 years ago, we were still trying to figure out our way out of it. How did you make it through that time period? And how did it either influence the new album or affect the way that you do things now?
Well, that's such a great question. So a couple of things happened, I guess, during that period. Um, I had just released my previous album, Libre, and we had a small tour booked in the US, and all of the dates like slowly but surely got like postponed. And then my husband, who's a bassist, all his tour dates got canceled, obviously. But at the same time, I booked a whole bunch of roles as an actor that really helped us through that period of time. So I play the role of Abuela, or the grandmother, on a new show for PBS called Rosie's Rules. And I also was invited to co-compose the music for that show. So all of a sudden I was doing that. And then I was also doing the role of this queen on My Little Pony show. And also actually just started recording for a show that features for the first time a lead character that's autistic. And I play the neighborhood crossing guard and music teacher and librarian. So all
Cool.
of a sudden I had all these roles that brought in the funding, and something that I also love to do. But in terms of songwriting, I was working on material for this latest album, Recuerdo. And I guess it was just a period of reflection for me, because all of a sudden, we were spending so much more time kind of cocooning in our
Hmm.
home.
Yeah.
And then because I still wanted to do some performing, I started performing online with Drew, my husband, and I was kind of forcing myself to play guitar, which I don't feel comfortable doing in public, but it was good for me to start working on my chops so that I wasn't just reliant on my musicians and my band.
So take me back, talk to me a little bit more about how you artistically put this album together. What was the vision? What's the hope for the listener? What was kind of the overall visceral feeling for this album?
Well, this album is really a tribute to my father, Gustavo Martinez, who passed away last year. And he was my hero and always will be. I grew up listening to how he um, came to Canada by bicycle with his brother, my tío Arturo, and they had nothing except $100 that they had gathered from family and friends. And then along the route, they were kind of given support and a little bit of money along the way from different people in the Mexican community who heard about these two brothers. So I kind of grew up with this idea that you can follow your dreams and you never know where it's going to lead. My dad had always told me, nothing comes easy. There's no shortcuts. Everything's hard. Even though you want to say you want to be a singer, like nothing's glamorous. And so I kind of had always followed his footsteps of like trying to do what I thought he wanted me to do, which was to like have a secure job. And so so this album, I guess, is me realizing my own gifts and that this sort of, um, faith in following your dreams, which is what he did, but I kind of came about it in a different way. I had done my undergraduate degree in biology, and then I did my master's in business. And only after finishing that did I realize, no, I still have this dream in me that I don't want to let go of.
Yeah.
So I grew up listening to a lot of music from Latin America, jazz music, classical music, but all from my dad's record collection. And slowly but surely, this is my fifth album. And I started off my first album with songs that I grew up listening to and a few of my own original songs. And then this album is like all original songs. And it also features a lot of collaborations with friends of mine who I really love working with. And of course, my band, who I've been with for over 20 years now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a kind of a nostalgic album and one that also speaks about, I guess, wrestling with one's fears and just being able to still move forward, even if you do feel that sense of, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what was the first live show that you saw growing up, jazz or otherwise, that really ignited this dream and wanted to be on that stage?
Oh my gosh, I've never been asked that before because I always get asked about like what's the first movie or I saw or people have asked me that, but I think oh my gosh, well I'm my first live show is probably this children's entertainer who still records albums. His name is Rafi,
Yeah.
and I loved his music and also like this kids group as well, Sharon Lois and Bram. But I think the performer that I listened to, and then only in my later life did I get to hear her live, was Gloria Stefan. I like idolized her, and I'm hoping I'm going to get to meet her at the Latin Billboard conference this coming fall. But yeah, like just that feeling of the Latin music. Even though I didn't grow up speaking Spanish, it's I heard my dad speaking it, and we'd always go to Mexico to visit my family there. But I just yeah, that style of music just gets right in me.
Yeah. So I'm curious so your creative zygote is split between singing and acting. How do those two kind of benefit each other? How does one affect the other? Is it a mutually beneficial relationship that enhances both of those crafts for you? How does that work?
Um, well, I feel like when I first started, I got the kind of the bug to perform when I landed my first role in my high school musical. So I was really shy, but I had it in me. Like I'd always perform to my dolls in my bedroom, and I saw the musicals, and I really wanted to, but I think it was such a strong visceral desire. I didn't want anyone to like say, "Oh no, you're not good enough." So it took a lot till I finally auditioned, and then in grade 12, I got the role of Rizzo in Grease, and there I was acting. I got that feeling of when the lights go down and you take people somewhere, and that's the same feeling that I hope I give people when we perform as in our live shows. In terms of acting though, I what I focus on right now is film and television. And just recently I realized that for me when I go on stage and once the music starts, I'm always so nervous, but once
Yeah.
the music starts, I just like I'm in a different zone. But with acting, it's always feels more like um I don't want to say work, but there's um when I'm working on a scene beforehand, like I want to just make sure I'm getting it right and it's what someone else envisions. Um, but I remember my acting coach recently said to me, it's like when I see you on stage, you're just playing. And that's the same thing when you're acting and just being able to get in that vibe. You're in the moment. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. That I think for me, when I've been acting, I'm still kind of watching myself, which means I'm not
Yeah.
really in the moment and I'm
Yeah.
not really the character. But with music, that comes much more easily to me. And now I'm just kind of hopefully learning how to do that more when I'm acting. And I
Yeah.
would like to actually, I'm just working on a project which I can't talk too much about, but that's my dream to bring those two worlds together and
Sure.
produce my own show.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. Back way, way back in the day, it must have been 2004. I was in a short film that did really well in a film contest here in Kansas City. And a good friend of mine lives in Germany now and makes films. And I remember working on that film for a couple days, and all of us that were working on it did everything. You know, I was taking pictures, we were doing the slate, we were doing all of this camera setup and taking directives and all that. I had never been that tired in my life after 2 days of what you would feel like most people would think is this adrenaline rush. You're just kind of moving around and being creative, but there's a different weight of the tiredness that goes into acting and that entire world. Do you feel like that? That a different tired after you sing versus or perform versus after you act?
That's so interesting. Yeah, actually, if I think about it, I mean, because live when we're performing live with my band, it's like an immediate connection with the audience, an immediate reward, and everyone coming up to you afterwards and having the chance to connect with the audience. Whereas I think on set, there's just so much pressure. I mean, it's like how much money every minute that, if that's going by.
Right.
I feel like there's this whole team of people that are behind the scenes. I'm not I'm not in control in terms of like, I mean, I'm leading my band. I mean, everyone's doing their own thing. I'm not leading them, but it's I had to like create the whole thing. But in terms of acting, I feel like it's more reactive. Like I'm being brought onto someone else's project, someone else's vision. So there's that other whole other pressure. Like I hope I'm doing what they want.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of waiting around. So like it's funny, I'm always like, why am I so tired? Because
Yeah.
it's a different, like it's almost like when you're traveling, you're just sitting there the whole time. You're
I
traveling
know.
the plane, but it's
Yeah.
tiring.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It's like your
Yeah.
brain's on overload. So, you know, the thing that's so kind of romantic about the notion of jazz is that people achieve their dreams. They get to play with their heroes. There's all of these levels that just add to the craft of being creative. What was it for you? What stage was it for you that you dreamed you were going to be on and you finally got on it and you were like, wow, I can't believe this is happening?
Ah, well, I guess there've been a lot of moments. But one in particular, there's a theater that I used to go to as a kid with my grandmother. She'd take me to see like musicals and performances. It's called the Winter Garden, the Elgin Winter Garden Theater. It's a beautiful old style theater with like all these like vines from the ceiling and those like old style velvet chairs that you sit in. And so I produced a show there back in I think 2013 or 2014 that was in celebration of the relationship between Mexico and Canada. I think it was the 75th anniversary. And that was also when I was launching an album called Mañana, my third album. And I had a bunch of Mexican musicians that were my guests. And we had a full house, sold it out. And I had my uncle's photography there and my dad's. I think we screened one of a video that my cousin, the director of a film that was made about that journey that my dad and her dad took from Mexico to Canada. We screened a piece of that there. So that definitely was a dream come true for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what is it every day that gets you up and excited about what you do as a creative? More specifically with your jazz, what do you like the best about being a professional musician?
For me, it's about it's really about connecting with the audience and being on stage. So I actually find the preparation in terms of, well, not the preparation for the show, that's fun, but the songwriting itself, that's more of a challenge.
Yeah.
And I was just looking, like I'm always like surrounded by the to-do list of all the ideas that I have of what I want to do and who I want to connect with and all the bookkeeping and all that. So that's like a never-ending list, but I've realized that I really have to prioritize the creative side because I think a lot of people think like, oh, that's so fun. Like you must have some music on all day with your kids. I'm like, actually, I don't. I'm literally tied to my desk for most of the time.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to make a more conscious effort of actually sitting down with my guitar or like sitting at the piano, which sadly I don't do enough of. I
Yeah.
just think it's so easy for me to get swiped with like checking off to-dos of administrative tasks.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that I mean, so my favorite thing is actually like recently we were giving a show at this beautiful theater in Toronto called Kerner Hall.
Hmm.
And when I got to do the rehearsal with the dancers and with all the musicians in a dance studio that I go to, um, that to me was like my most favorite time. And I growing up, I loved dance. So
Yeah.
working with those dancers was really, really fun.
So, being 5 albums in, you've obviously played with a lot of musicians in the world of jazz. What have you learned from the elders and legends and luminaries that you, in turn, teach younger players that you get around?
Well, you know what? I really don't do teaching at all because I feel completely unqualified.
But I
But
guess but I guess by osmosis, having this history and being kind of a veteran of this world, there's going to be younger players that you're going to be on the bandstand with, or you're going to run into. Is there something that you like to kind of lend to them that you learn? Because jazz is all about taking that torch and passing it on and keeping this lineage bright and burning and going into the future. So I guess it's more of that than anything else.
yes, and it's such a good question because I do want to work with young people and I started doing a workshop called the Artist Office and I feel like it's more skills that I've learned on the job because I wasn't trained as a jazz musician or as a musician and I just kind of learned on the fly.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I think is really important is to recognize that I think we all have unique gifts that we're given and I think it's very easy to take those things for granted and think like, oh, well, that's nothing. But it is something because the things that we might find really easy to do, other people might find really difficult to do. So it's
Yeah.
almost insulting to say to someone, oh, no, don't, that's nothing, because it is something. So I think it's really important to recognize your gifts and to not compare yourself to someone else because that's like the biggest waste of time and energy and I've done that and it's just like I'm like oh well I can't sing like that so what's the point,
Yeah.
I don't have those belt voices that I really wish I did.
Yeah.
But other people really appreciate my voice because it's soothing or I've been told a lot of other really nice things, so I think it's so important to just be grateful and not a like be grateful kind of way but just really appreciate wow like even though this is easy like certain things are easier for me to appreciate them and then to look at things that might not come as easily not as like super hard but as a challenge and to think well what one saying that I love is like your greatest challenge can be your greatest opportunity. And so for example I am like I find being on time and not trying to pack too many things in my day really difficult, but then I thought okay what if I could take the way I'm calling rather than saying like I'm time challenged to say I'm a time queen and
Yeah.
actually giving myself extra time and figuring out like what are those things that are actually getting in the way that might not be so obvious. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So why do you love jazz?
Why do I love jazz? I think because of the freedom that is really a big part of it and just that opportunity to be spontaneous and to improvise. I for me I love that and I can't say that I'm super I take so many risks on stage, but I love that the musicians that I work with who are trained jazz musicians, like every time we go on stage, it's like a different new thing that's just come out, on stage. I love that magic. And I think that's perhaps one of the things that can't be replaced,
Yeah.
with AI all the time, but like not having a computer generated thing, like something that actually happens that's human in the moment. And even the fact that mistakes can be beautiful and
Yeah.
that you discover new things when you are taking risks.
So this is kind of a two-part question. If a time machine pulled up and you could go back in the annals of jazz and see one show, where would you go? And of all of the modern players that are out there today, who would you love to see live that you
Oh,
haven't yet?
um, well, there are so many wonderful musicians, but I mean, the one that I guess I started learning some of her material originally was Billie Holiday.
Yeah.
So be to be able to just go back in time and see her when she was first starting and to see her live would be incredible. Um, and what was the next part of your question?
So,
Modern?
yeah, like of anybody that's out there right now doing their thing, who would you love to catch live that you haven't seen yet?
Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like being stuck at home with, well, not stuck at home, but I don't do as much traveling now. Um, having three kids. So there's a lot of people who I have not heard live. Um, but I mean, oh my goodness. I feel like people, even for like a lot of artists from my own city that aren't necessarily like super famous, but ones that I just don't get a chance to see.
Yeah.
Um, Barbara Lika, for example, is an incredible jazz vocalist and composer. And um, I've actually never seen her live, but
Yeah.
I listen to her music. I love to go hear Arturo Sandoval.
Yeah.
Uh, oh my
That
gosh, so
that was
many.
that was my favorite show ever. I saw him. So we at the end of August in Kansas City, we have this week-long celebration of Charlie Parker's birthday. And he was in town, and at one of our venues, the Folly, he played, and I'd never seen somebody that had that level of mastery over the crowd and what he did and how he engaged, and he was funny, and he did an encore, and people didn't treat it like a jazz show. It was almost like this it was almost like a rock and roll show. I mean, there was just everybody was standing up, they were getting into it, he was getting everybody excited. He's just so dynamic. I had no idea. I mean, he's one of the best ever, but I had no idea live he was going
Oh,
to do that. Yeah.
wow.
So, it was pretty amazing. Um so at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. You know, family, friends, everyone that sees you act, everyone that sees you on stage, buys your music, but you ultimately run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Who do I think?
This is the therapy hour, right?
Oh my gosh. Um, like who do I think I am in terms of
I mean,
like
the Venn diagram kind of goes into itself. It's kind of holistic because everyone has this idea of who they think you are, and we all have to kind of play to certain roles in our lives. You have kids, you have a spouse, you have work when you act, you're getting on stage, you have all these personas, so to speak. But ultimately, you're the one driving the id, ego, superego. So what is your perception of you when you go out and you get into the world?
well, I feel like I just want I feel like when at I'm on stage, I'm at a concert, I just want people to feel welcome. And I feel like that's one of the most beautiful things about music, that it can bring people together from all walks of life and all different languages. Like there's that music breaks down all those
Yeah.
barriers. And so for me, my mission, I guess, when I'm on stage anyway, and I feel like perhaps in real life too, is I want people to feel at ease and comfortable with me and just be able to feel at home. So I hope that I do that with my music and also when I'm working um, with another actor and also in my own family. Like, I think that's my biggest challenge, especially now that I have teenagers that are almost teenagers. I've got twins who are 12 and a 15-year-old, but I want them to feel comfortable so that they feel safe and can trust me to open up and hopefully be able to support them. And I think that with my music, I don't think it's like me necessarily, but I just hope that I'm part of this music that puts people at ease and makes people feel good.
Yeah. So if anyone out there wants to see you live, whether it's music or acting, at your latest album, your previous albums, where's the best place for them to go to do that?
Well, my website has I realize that I don't know how I don't have actual music for my latest album on there. I'm like, wow, that's kind of important. So, but amandamartinez.ca is my website. And then I post on Instagram, which is Amanda Martinez Music, and on Facebook, Amanda Martinez Music page. And sometimes, if I remember, on Twitter, Amanda
Right.
Martinez. Yeah, but that's where you can find me.
Okay. Excellent. Amanda, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your story, for your time. Best of luck with everything.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you
Uh,
very much.
You bet. Absolutely.